All right, got it. Got the
We got the
notification.
prompt.
Woohoo! Today, YouTube is working with us. Welcome, everyone. If you are joining us on our live stream, this is the Tuesday, September 5th meeting of the OpenJS Foundation Standards Working Group. We have gathered some of our friends and colleagues to discuss the wonderful world of web standards, as we do approximately every other week. So our agenda issue is number 261. We start as usual with any announcements or news anybody wants to share, anything fun, exciting, newsworthy, etc.
So one reason I figured I'd show up is that next week is TPAC and I'm gonna be going there myself for the first time. And one of the things I figured I'd try and do there is start the conversation on DOM localization specification, which is really my first foray into the land of W3C and WhatWG. But yeah, figured I'd mention that at least here. I'll add a link or something to the notes doc as well. But
That's awesome. We have many colleagues, I think, who will be in the area too. So it'd be great if y'all, like Brian Cardell, I think will be there. Leah, did you say you would be there? Yeah, she got her hand up.
Yes, I will be there. And in fact, we proposed a breakout with 2 other tag members about the future powerful APIs of the web platform, basically to explore how we could make it possible for the web platform to compete with native by having the kinds of APIs that developers expect from native platforms, and like exploring how we can make this possible without compromising security and privacy, because that is a recurring tension. The thing is, I realized today that I actually submitted my travel request in my own repo. So all of this time I was waiting for approvals and the PR was sitting in my own repo. So I submitted it again today to the correct repo. Sorry about that.
Who among us has not done that? I definitely have done that several times. So yeah.
You just need to have your own fund, right? And then it works.
Just pay yourself. No. Cool, thanks. So Leah, Brian, Emily from our crew, and then a lot of other wonderful, friends of OpenJS also. So super dope. Also, similarly, I think, and this is, Robin may have been able to make the meeting this morning and I wasn't, but the Secure the Web Forward workshop, I believe they're also hoping to have a breakout session at TPAC on the Wednesday for that. So lots of relevant and interesting things happening at TPAC next week, and look forward to getting a report from folks who are able to make it in person. Cool. Other announcements or shares? Project related news?
If it wasn't already brought up, TC39 is later this month in Tokyo.
That's on the calendar. Okay. Any CPC news, Joe?
Not that I can think of. We have a meeting today. If anybody has something that comes to mind, please chime in, but I can't think of anything.
We're making progress on the travel fund thing.
Group.
Is that happening in the working group meetings or in the main CPC?
Kind of both, but most of the work in the working group meetings. Yeah, Toby wrote up a good summary.
Yeah, we have the working group. I mean, the working session came up with a plan that's essentially Ben's plan. And we're going to bring it to the CPC today to sort of like get it approved there, and then move forward. So I think we're gonna be moving pretty fast, hopefully.
Awesome. and that certainly is very relevant to our liaison friends here. So thank you for that hard work, Toby, and also Ben, who's not here, but thanks, Ben. I suppose if there's no other announcements, I'll move us into our agenda. All right. Very relevantly, I'll take up issue 259 as the next topic. This is the 2024 meeting schedule / conflicts. And I think Chris opened this. Yes, indeed. TC39 does a pretty good job trying to plan their plenary events in advance. They are trying to make sure that, where possible, if there's an alignment of meeting time / space, they can do that. Or of course, if we can avoid conflicts, not just probably with OpenJS, but any other relevant groups. As a reminder, we do have that public calendar for standards meetings. And so if we had events that we were aware of that we wanted to make sure was on, and we could surface that to Chris and the other chairs, but that is that issue is open. Any planning, I mean, I don't know to what extent everybody in this group is responsible for scheduling working group or other meetings for their communities. Anything big this year we want to make sure is on this calendar? If not, I will just make the note that we will update the public calendar as these dates get sort of further locked in, and then just make sure we're sharing it with others. All right, cool. So ahead of TPAC, let's take up number 260. W3C wants to increase the size of the tag. Toby brought this to our attention on the repo. Toby, you want to introduce the topic for those who were not able to check it out before?
Yeah, sure. From time to time, the advisory committee of W3C votes on stuff. And sometimes stuff is actually relevant to us, and sometimes it's not. And this one just seemed to be relevant. And so essentially I just opened an issue here asking Leah whether it was. Well, Leah had been driving that effort, so it was super relevant. And so we voted, and that's all there is to it. This was just sort of like a heads up more than anything, really.
So is the vote closed? Not yet.
I don't think so. I mean, I did our part and then promptly forgot about the whole thing, to be very honest. But I don't think it's closed yet. Leah, do you know?
I don't know if it's closed because I'm not an AC rep, so I don't get these notifications.
Yeah, I'm not sure that AC reps do. Also, maybe. I mean, sometimes. A lot of them also sort of like. I mean, there's a lot of traffic on some of those, and with some really relevant stuff and some really not relevant. I haven't seen anything. I don't think it has been sort of approved yet.
So it looks like it is open until today. So they usually close this like midnight Boston time. So maybe, I mean, I assume tomorrow or the day after they'll report the.
I mean, frankly, it's also non-contentious. Like, I don't see anyone actually like voting against, like taking the pain to actually vote against this.
Yeah. So
it feels fairly straightforward. I think this is more about leveraging things like this to make a case for stuff that we care about. So it's more like a comms exercise, really, than a voting exercise, which is why I made our statement public and not just a answer to a survey. When you answer those surveys, you can sort of answer them at different level of like privacy. And you can essentially just answer to vote, like vote, and you can vote and tell the advisory members what you voted for, and you can vote and essentially make it public too. And so that's what I did.
So if so, assuming this is a this is in the bag, no sweat. How many seats would they open and on what time scale?
I think it's 2.
2 immediately,
Right.
or would they do
3,
it
2.
sooner?
I think it's 1 and 1, 1 elected and 1 appointed.
And do you know, Leah, when they would be open, like then trying to fill those?
I believe the theory is in the next election cycle, and we're trying to switch to a model where appointed seats happen after the election, as opposed to the previous model where people were appointed before the election, which doesn't make sense since the whole point of appointed seats was to balance any lack of diversity, like any skills that we need in the tag where we didn't get we didn't get people elected with these skills, like things like that. So appointing people before the election made no sense. So I think basically the idea is the next opportunity to elect people, we should have the extra seat. The next opportunity to appoint people, we would have the extra appointee seat.
Awesome. So I suppose with the hopeful non-controversy of this vote and the hopeful agreement of the broader AC, we should be potentially contemplating people that we would like to encourage to run, or to put forward as potential nominees for the appointed seat. So that's be thinking about that, I suppose. Anything else? I'll leave this issue open until we know how the result goes, and we can post that it passed or didn't pass, and we'll close the issue.
Sounds good.
Super duper. All right. I want to go down to 256 next. This is document guidance for requesting travel funds for standards WG related activities. We kind of touched on this just in the announcements with the travel fund progress continuing. I'm not sure that there's anything specific to tackle on this just as yet, unless Toby or any others would want to add anything more.
Yeah, briefly, the way that we're looking at this and the folks that worked on it from the CPC is having a scoring rubric to sort of assess each request according to that rubric. So I think that starting to think about this from the perspective of this group, and maybe making suggestions as to that rubric, I think that would be useful. Whether like those are one-on-one folks going there, or whether like the standards working group wants to have like a point of view and share that point of view. Either way, but I think it would be good. Trying to find the link for this thing.
It's just looking too at our last meeting minutes, and I think that was very similar. It sort of sounds like we've gotten further since we met 2 weeks ago, but in our discussion, we talked about like fair evaluation criteria and kind of what that would look like, and maybe emphasizing outcomes and sort of like strategic value of the travel. So is it time to start trying to get some of that down on paper? I think we had some very simple ideas last time. And if so, where's the best place to put that?
So I tried to if you look at the issue I just posted in the chat, then I'm going to add to the doc if I find it. I try to bake in some of the, so I started working on a start for the rubric, essentially, and try to bake in some of the discussions we had last week. So I think, yeah, I mean, I think it's good to have those, like things that we care about as a standards group there as early as possible, because that's just going to make it easier to like consider those the earlier they are. I mean, like the intent is for this to work for everyone, right? So I think there's the right intent there. Just like not accidentally forgetting something that matters is important. And maybe if at some point like there is sort of like a conflict of priorities, then maybe it would be good to have like a statement from the working group itself. But I'm not sure it's like it does really make sense to do that at this point.
Well, as a like yes and to that, I think that the general sentiment seems to be we want to be able to pay for everything, but we have a limited amount of money. So it's not that we really need to worry about missing someone as much because things fall through cracks. It's more that we want to make sure that when we inevitably have to tell somebody we can't afford your thing, how do we do it so that it doesn't feel personal, so it feels fair, and so like we maximize the chance that the things that we all deem are most important at the end of the year are the things that the money went to, and that we minimize the chance that the money went to something that was less critical on our priority list. And we have to, unfortunately, define in some way, it's going to be hard to do it objectively and concretely, but define in some way how to make those different P0, P1, P2, because if everything's a P0, nothing is. And so that's really the difficalty.
I mean, 100% agree. Oh, sorry, Jory.
It's just, and I think kind of tying this conversation with last week's, one of the areas for discussion was for 2024, what do we think is P0 versus P1 or P2, because we know that in 2025 that could be something a little different, and so I think that that's a valid point of view. Sorry, that's it.
Yeah, so I mean, just what I wanted to say about this is agree 100%, Jordan. I think part of that conversation happens in like there is a conversation in the CPC that's kind of like reflects exactly what you were saying, but I think there's like a specific conversation that this group can have, which is to say, hey, we care about these things that are slightly different and more transversal and more sort of like not focused on the same kind of events and all of the other projects, and we want to make sure that like there's those work in there too, or maybe we have our criteria about what the group cares about is slightly different, or there are specific questions that we need to have answers to in order to be able to make assessments that maybe other projects don't have. So it's more about like, is there something, if there are specific aspects to this working group that the CPC working on the rest of the stuff needs to know about.
And I would also say that as long as the standards group isn't eating up a lion's share of the fund, I imagine that the CPC will largely defer to this group about our prioritizations for standards related things. And I think that the CPC would prefer that. So it may come down, yeah, and it may be that the CPC decides to carve out and say the standards group gets this amount of money to figure out, or it may be less, it may just be, let's see how it goes, right? Like it's unclear, but I think it's in the standards group's interest to try to own that aspect of the conversation as much as we can.
Yeah, entirely. Though I do want to point out that I know that Robin did the math on the kind of travel that this group does. And we're just talking about like pushing for like another tag member earlier. And if you add, if you just add like these numbers up, you kind of eat the whole budget fairly quickly with just this group, right? So like, I do want to, I do want to make sure that we have, that that's clear.
Yeah, there's definitely a international component. There's a lot worldwide travel to support, sometimes more frequent meetings, sometimes not getting the efficiency of scale that like OpenJS World might provide because that happens. So I think as action, it sounds like checking out the issue that Toby linked, that's 1154 on the CPC repo. Add any comments or thoughts or feedback to that work there. And then also for this group, for 2024, I think we need to really consider what we want to prioritize. We can go back and take a look at some of the priorities, and maybe I'll put this on our agenda for next time. We can go back and take a look at the priorities that we had identified like about 2 years ago to focus on, and see if we want to shift a little bit, and see how that might inform what we want to invest in from a travel perspective for next year. And so I think that's a good way of proceeding, because to everyone's point, we want to be fair, we want to be judicious, and we want to really maximize what we can do. So,
And at the risk of beating a dead horse, I do think that whenever you can make the case that what you do is valuable not only to this group but like concretely to specific projects, that's relevant, and you want to consider doing that, because there's clearly not enough money for everyone to travel at the rate that we're doing. I'm not saying that this is not like an exclusive thing, but I'm saying like when we can, we should.
all right. I'm gonna move us on to the next topic, lest we do beat that dead horse, and say we'll talk about this from a strategic standpoint next time. 253 is our next issue. This is the nomenclature of working group has sort of been really not widely adopted in the OpenJS lingua franca, and collab space has. We've got a lot of collab spaces now. So we all last week agreed that or not last week, 2 weeks ago, that becoming a standards collab space versus a standards working group was generally fine. I don't recall exactly why we didn't close that issue at the time. Maybe it was because we needed to just do basically the labor of updating the documentation on our repository. But is there anything outstanding? Can we call this one effectively closed?
I think we can just close this and reopen one. Whoever like does the work on the CPC will just reopen one when the change has been made, and we need to rename stuff here.
Okay. Was there anything that we were waiting on the CPC for? Like, did they need to like vote to?
Yeah, and we need to vote. We need to figure out a charter. We need a bunch of small things.
Okay.
Essentially, like briefly, we need to align the working groups and the collab spaces to use the same language, and then allow one of the two, I can't remember what it is, to both have a charter, and one of which says the group is responsible for the decision-making power is delegated, and the other one isn't. And we just need to be clear about this and have language for this. There's a bunch of like small things to do. And when we've done this, we'll get back to this group and say we're ready to move.
Okay. So
this is a bit painful.
Right.
It's kind of like silly process, but the idea is like to get rid of like all of these silly processes in the future. So we do a bit of work now, so we have like less work in the future.
So,
For context.
okay, that's helpful. So we can basically say yes for now, agreed, close this issue, and then the CPC will get back with us with the task list of things that we need to do. Okay, Roger.
Which should be.
All right. All right. All right, cool. So there's because we've spent a good deal of time on process things, we have a couple of other longer running issues, but there's a interesting chat in the thread. I don't know if Mike or Emily.
Sorry to hijack the chat.
No, I love it. I think it's actually more, let's talk about that. You know, so do you want to discuss or no?
I just, kind of like I worked on support for template systems and localization systems back in the day, and just wanted to, if people are kind of, if the W3 is spinning up, I just, I think Emily answered my question. Yes, there, Mozillans are aware of that kind of particular failure mode, and so it'll be that threat model will be taken into account.
Yeah, hopefully not at the DOM localization level, which is the thing that I hope we'll be discussing more in this space. It's so all of what I'm working on is this whole like stack of localization standards. I've got 2 going on under the Unicode consortium so far. Then I've got 2 proposals in ECMA TC39, and now I'm opening up another layer with a conversation on DOM localization in probably it's going to end up in WICG and then WAWG. But yeah, the concerns you're mentioning need to get addressed at lower levels than that, so that they're not becoming an issue there. But it's definitely something that we're keeping in mind, yeah.
So I mean, I think kind of as a meta point, ideally the standards collab space can be a spot where we're talking more about like these sorts of discussions and questions over time versus the processy stuff, which we kind of have to get hopefully out of the way, or at least reduce. But thank you for bringing this Mike to our chat. Let's see. Okay, so the next issues were related to member representation and to so this is number 173 is the issue. Related pull requests are 239 and 240. I think that these are largely done. I just need to do some cleanup, and then they will be, which I said last time I would do before this time, and now it is this time, so I'm saying that I will do it before next time. Does that sound familiar to anyone?
Well seen.
Yes. But I think that we're pretty much as like settled as we can on these points, getting this in, and then kind of taking another revision as we discuss and kind of get a little bit further clarity, and then we can close these out. But to Chris's point from last week, these are kind of old, stale, so it's time to wrap it up. And that's it for the tagged issues. I know there's a couple of open pull requests too on our repo, and so we'll just take a second and go go, and that's 257 and 258. So those are meeting notes from the last couple of meetings in August. So if y'all want to take a minute, submit any updates, I will commit any amendments and merge those in and get the notes prepared for today's meeting. And let me just take another look at the issues. I think that's it. Is there any other business today that anyone wants to bring? Any updates from our liaison friends, updates from the TCs, from Unicode Consortium, from any W3C community or WG groups to share?
So for the message format, we call it the message format working group, but it's really a subgroup of the Unicode Consortium CLDR technical committee. We're working on the message format 2 message formatting specification, and it's feeling like we're probably finally gonna be able to release that as a part of next spring's ICU 75 release, including hopefully implementations in ICU for C and ICU for J and maybe ICU for X, and then of course a JavaScript implementation as well. But this has been a thing I've been working on for like 4 years now, so it's nice for that to be reaching a release, hopefully, eventually. And this is the reason I'm going to TPAC, because we'll be talking with a core group of the people around the TPAC. But yeah, figured I'd share that since I've not been here for a while.
That sounds like big progress. So that you said next, you mean spring 2024? And I assume not spring 2025, although ICU does plan on that.
Spring 24.
Okay.
But we need to get the spec into decent shape by like the end of the year, so the ICU for C and for J implementations can get finalized in time to hit the release next spring.
Well, when that finally happens, we'll send you some bubbles. So you can pop a bottle in celebration. That's the joke. That actually reminds me, though, World Standards Week is October 9th through the 13th. There are a couple of activities that I'm trying to get organized for my team. We're going to do a couple of webinars and a blog post. But if there was anything this group wanted to put together in terms of, a write-up or something that we could include in the broader Linux Foundation standards and specs kind of celebration of World Standards Week, that'd be kind of cool. Let's see, the other random thought I just had. Any other business? I'll actually open an issue about that. Other business? All right. Then I guess, Joe, you can take us off the live stream. We can adjourn for today.
I think Joe stepped away, so I'm not
Joe
sure how
stepped
that's going
away.
to happen.
I don't know how to turn this off.
I think
We're
we're
never
never much stuck
ending
here
this
until he
stream.
gets back.
No, the recording just goes on forever as long as Joe's logged in. All right. Well, it was so good to see everyone. I hope you had a good, if you were on holiday from the Labor Day weekend, I hope you had a good one. TPACers, I so wish I could be there with you guys in a couple weeks, but we'll enjoy it. Say hi to everyone for us. or if you're going to be at Open Source Summit EU, say hi to everybody. And yeah, we'll just, I guess I'll hang tight so Joe doesn't come back to an empty room.
I mean, it would be especially funny if he
I
doesn't
might.
know that it is being filmed
Still running.
and live
Yeah.
streamed.
Yeah. Yeah. And he's like just talking to his dog because he's got the dogs in there. It's like, oh, good dog.
I mean, this is still being live streamed now, so.
I know. It's
I know you know, but I'm just saying. Yeah.
So I'm just not going to say, certainly nothing embarrassing. Nothing, well, probably
We
some
could just
embarrassing.
use this time to talk about Joe.
We could,
We could.
And he'll never find out until
Spot
he
agenda
watches
item.
the stream.
until he watches the stream. Exactly. He'll never know that we
I'll
said
never know.
Joe is a very interesting and funny and loving person. He will never know that I said that because he probably won't watch the stream.
Leah, if you're hanging around, I do have a question about that I pasted in chat earlier. I don't know if you want to speak to that, but I'm just curious about
Sure.
how
Mhm.
oh
Yeah,
wow,
go
there was some weird glitch. How the breakout session that you're doing was Togo at W3C sort of like matches whatever Project Fugu is doing. And if Project Fugu is still a thing, and I mean, I know it's a Chromium thing, but I'm sort
Yeah,
of wondering what the thought is behind this, if you can share now.
I think it's basically Project Fugu is seen as a more of a Chromium thing. It has certain optics right now. We want to engage more. We want to engage stakeholders more broadly. And I feel that also because people at this point have entrenched views about Project Fugu, it might help to start the conversation afresh. This started from me, Sangwan, and Dan, me and Sangwan really, saying that there's all these like powerful APIs that are coming to the tag for review. And there is this tendency to like reject a lot of them because, oh, this might compromise privacy or this might compromise security. And it's like, we can see the user need as well. And it actually ends up compromising user privacy a lot of the time if certain things cannot be done with the web at all. So people end up having to build native apps for it. Like that, I think that hurts users in a variety of different ways. So we were thinking like, what could be done so we could have our cake and eat it too? Like, what could an installation process look like where it would be a strong enough signal so that we can make these kinds of APIs available to a web app? Questions like that.
Thank you. That's helpful. Yeah, it's this is a topic that will never die, right?
Well, I hope it does die. I hope we solve it, and then there's nothing to solve, so it does die.
That would be great. All right,
Bye,
folks.
Mike.
Thank you, Leah.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone.
Talk to you soon. Bye,
all.
folks.
Bye. I mean, I have to join another call too, so I do feel kind of bad. I guess I'll just leave. Okay, Joe, if you come back, we ended up early and sorry for the extra live stream.